I spent most of last month in Washington, D.C. So it is great to be back in America. And it is such a blessing to be with each and every one of you. You know, we are living in extraordinary times. Just 3 weeks ago, a man was stopped after climbing the fence at the White House. The Secret Service ran up to him. They said, "I'm sorry, Mr. President, you got 2 more years." Well, and I don't know if you saw it, actually last week, a second person was stopped climbing the fence at the White House. The Secret Service ran up to them and said, "I'm sorry, Hillary, not yet!" And not ever. We are facing unprecedented threats in this country. Liberty is under assault. Our economy is under assault. And yet, I'm here with a word of encouragement, a word of hope, a word of optimism. People are waking up all over this great country. And as we like to say in Texas, things are fixing to get a whole lot better. In 3 days, we're going to retake the U.S. Senate and retire Harry Reid as majority leader. In 3 days, the state of Alaska is going to elect a brand new U.S. Senator. Let me tell you, the fight for this country, for the direction of this country, Alaska is ground zero. This fight is being fought out house to house, person to person. And let me tell you what the stakes are. The stakes in every one of our families come down to 3 things: jobs, liberty, and security. Let's talk about jobs. We'll get to liberty. I promise you we'll get to liberty. For 6 years, we've been trapped in the great stagnation. The Obama economy, it isn't working. Millions of people are hurting, and the people who are hurting the most are the most vulnerable. Young people, Hispanics, African Americans, single moms, people who are struggling. And it's real simple. Jobs don't come from Washington. They come from the men and women in this room. They come from small businesses. Now, I am aware a certain former Secretary of State said, "Don't let anyone tell you jobs come from corporations or businesses." And for everyone who's counting on getting your job from a community organizer, I'm not sure I'd convey that to the mortgage company. And I'll tell you, we have an extraordinary opportunity with jobs because we are on the cusp of an American energy renaissance. Now listen, Texas and Alaska Alaska, we got a whole lot in common. I am in denial and I refuse to admit it. Who believes those lying map makers anyway? Basic values, the values that are one and the same. We love freedom. And we understand that God has blessed this nation with incredible energy reserves. That if only we stop being knuckleheads, we are on the cusp of North American energy independence. Now, I feel confident that Alaska, like Texas, you don't have a whole lot of politicians walk up here and say, I hate oil. Look, in our states, that's a shooting offense. But you know what? Every January, every other January, Mark Begich goes to Washington and he casts a vote that says, I hate oil. Because when you cast a vote for Harry Reid, you're casting a vote for the federal government to lead an assault on developing the energy resources in this country, and Mark Begich every 2 years casts a vote for Harry Reid to lead an assault on the people of Alaska. We need to lead boldly. We need to embrace the energy renaissance. We need to right now build the Keystone Pipeline. We need to make clear the federal government has zero authority over fracking. We need to stop the EPA's assault on small businesses and jobs. You know, in West Texas, the Obama administration was trying to use a lizard to shut down oil and gas production. Well, you know my view on lizards? They make darn fine boots. We need fundamental tax reform. And you know the simplest and best tax reform? We should abolish the IRS. We should move to a simple, flat tax that's fair, that every American can fill out your taxes on a postcard. And there are 110,000 IRS agents. When we padlock the IRS building, we should take all 110,000 and put them down on our southern border. Somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but think about it for a second. If you had traveled a long, arduous journey through Central America, you swim across the Rio Grande, and the first thing you see is 110,000 IRS agents. You turn around and go home too. The secrets to jobs and growth and opportunity are simple. You get the federal government out of the way, you unchain small businesses, you allow the American ingenuity, the free enterprise system here to create opportunity. You know, several months ago I was at a rally in North Platte, Nebraska. Out in the countryside, nearly 1,000 people came in. After the rally, a young woman came up to me. She hugged my neck. She said, Ted, I'm a single mom. I've got 6 kids at home. My husband left me, and he won't pay child support. She said, right now I'm working 5 different jobs. Not one of them is even 30 hours a week, because Obamacare kicks in at 30 hours a week. She said, I'm having a hard time keeping clothes on the backs of my kids. And she started choking up. She said, the single hardest part? I never get to see my kids. I go from one job to the next job to the next job, and my kids don't get the mom that they need and they deserve. That is who we're fighting for. And I'll tell you, one of the first steps we need to do with a Republican majority and a Republican president is repeal every word of Obamacare. Now help me on this, Dan. I seem to recall it was a senator from Alaska who was the 60th deciding vote for Obamacare. Well, there's a great ad running right now in New Hampshire. Says, if you like your senator, you keep your senator. Look, the second big thing we need to do is we need to defend liberty. We need to defend the Bill of Rights, all of them. We need to defend the First Amendment. We have the IRS demanding of citizen groups. Tell us what books you're reading. Tell us the content of your prayers. You know what? The federal government has no business asking any American the content of our prayers.
That's right.
Just a couple of months ago, we saw a tremendous victory for religious liberty at the Supreme Court in the Hobby Lobby case. And yet, following that, Senate Democrats came to the Senate floor and introduced legislation to gut the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, to strip away your and my religious liberty. Now, 2 decades ago, when the Religious Freedom Restoration Act passed, it passed the Senate 97-3. It used to be there was bipartisan agreement on protecting religious liberty. We said, look, we might disagree on marginal tax rates, but when it comes to protecting your faith and my faith and our ability to seek out the Lord God Almighty with all of our heart, mind, and soul, we are united. This summer, when Democrats introduced legislation to gut our religious freedom, there are 55 Senate Democrats. Do you know how many Senate Democrats stood up and defended religious liberty? 0. Every single Senate Democrat, including Senator Mark Begich, voted to take away your and my religious freedom. I gave a floor speech on the Senate floor with a picture of John F. Kennedy next to me, and a quote that said, I will not stand with someone. Where was Mark Begich? Now, I'm pretty sure he comes back to Alaska and says, well, gosh darn it, I like my guns. Well, then where were you when they were coming to try to take them away from the people of Alaska and the people of Texas? We need to defend the Fourth Amendment and the Fifth Amendments, our right to privacy. How many of y'all have your cell phones here today? Please leave your cell phones on. I want to make sure President Obama hears every word we say. We need to defend the 10th people. That means there are areas of our lives the federal government has no business getting in the middle of. They're left to the states and to the people. Questions like marriage. And like education. And we need to repeal every word of Common Core. Education is too important, it's too foundational to have it governed by unelected bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. It needs to be at the state level, or even better, at the local level, where parents have direct control over it. And the third critical issue in this election is security. We need to restore America's leadership in the world. For 6 years, under Barack Obama and Harry Reid and Mark Begich, we've been crying. For 6 years, America has receded from leadership in the world. It's created a vacuum. And into that vacuum have stepped nations like Russia and Iran and China. And it's made the world a whole lot more dangerous place. The Russian bear has awakened from hibernation, and it's encountering the Obama kitty cat. We need to get back to the principles of peace through strength. Which means, among other things, we need to stop this administration's efforts to degrade and weaken our military. We need to stand with our soldiers, our sailors, our airmen, our Marines, and we need to defend the United States of America. And it is long past time. We need to secure our borders. And we need to stop amnesty. And by the way, your good senator's on the record on that. So before the summer recess, I introduced legislation to end President Obama's amnesty, to make clear the president has no authority to illegally grant amnesty to anyone in this country. Now the House of Representatives stood up and led. They took the legislation I introduced, and the House of Representatives passed that legislation. It came over to the Senate. Harry Reid, the Senate Democrats, they stood united, and they voted, and Mark Begich voted against stopping President Obama's amnesty. You know, this election's a simple choice. It's a clear choice. There's no ambiguity, there are no grays. If you support jobs and economic growth and opportunity, vote Dan Sullivan. If you want to continue the American energy renaissance and get more and more high-paying jobs and energy, vote Dan Sullivan. If you want to open up the EPA from shutting down mining and shutting down coal. Vote Dan Sullivan. If you want common sense tax reform to produce economic growth and opportunity, vote Dan Sullivan. If you want to defend the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment and the Fifth Amendment, the 10th Amendment, and the entire Bill of Rights and the entire Constitution, vote Dan Sullivan! And if you want to restore America's leadership in the world, if you want to stand with our fighting men and women and say not, what difference does it make? But we got your back. Then vote Dan Sullivan! I've got a simple task that I'm going to ask each and every one of you to do. We're 3 days away from election. On election day, I want to ask each and every one of you to go, show up, and vote for Dan 10 times. Now look, I'm not encouraging voter fraud. We're not Democrats. But let me tell you a very simple way you can do it. If every one of you shows up on Tuesday, and you pull the lever for Dan, and you go home tonight or tomorrow or Monday or Tuesday and you pick up the phone and you call 9 other people. Call your friends, call your family, call your sister, call your coworker, your neighbor, your son, and say, this election matters. If every one of you in this room gets 9 other people to show up and vote who wouldn't have voted otherwise, you will have just voted for Dan 10 times. And let me tell you something, if the men and women in this room do that, I guarantee you, Dan Sullivan will be the next United States Senator from the great state of Alaska.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, I want to thank Senator Cruz, John Binkley, so many. I'm looking out outside. I'm looking over the sea of faces here. I see so many friends, so many supporters, so many former colleagues. Where's the poet laureate of Fairbanks, Click Bishop? Darlene? How you doing? Good. Well, listen, I want to thank everybody. First of all the supporters. And in terms of this race, which is so important, as Senator Cruz mentioned. I want to thank Fairbanks, though, even more broadly, right? I want to thank you for, in many ways, changing my life. And I'm very serious about this. I think most of you know that an amazing daughter of Fairbanks, my incredible wife, Julie Faye Sullivan, was born and raised here. I met her, fell madly in love with her, and when she said, hey, we're going to move back to Alaska, my hometown, I looked at her as a young man and said, Roger that, as long as you want. And then he looked at me and said, Dan, you know, I can kind of go pretty long. All night. But, like I said, pretty simple election. First of all, we've been running on records. You know, Mark Bagich talks a lot. Here's the record of our junior senator. Take a look. 291 bills introduced, part of Harry Reid's Senate majority team, leadership team in the Senate majority. 291 bills introduced in 6 years. 2 have become law, and one of those was to rename a federal office building. I'm serious. That's the record. Also, someone who has never been allowed to bring a roll call vote on an amendment that he has sponsored on the floor of the U.S. Senate. Ever. And he's part of Harry Reid's Senate Majority Leadership Team. It's a record that's not working. So what's the vision? We've been campaigning for the last year. We've laid out a very simple vision, focusing on the areas that Senator Cruz was talking about. 1, we have to roll back the Obama administration's federal overreach and overregulation of every aspect of our lives. And Mark Bagich is now saying how, hey, Obama's irrelevant. He's gone in 2 years. Okay? I couldn't disagree more. Think about the last 2 years of the Obama administration. If Harry Reid and Mark Bagich are continuing to rubber stamp that administration's policies. Think about it. What we need to do now is start to roll it back. So let me give you an example. As Senator Cruz mentioned, there are many, many good bills that have already passed the House on reining in this overregulation. But when I was coming back here today, I thought of a new one. How about this as legislation? Making sure that we strip the EPA of the ability to carry firearms. I think that would be very sensible legislation. But that's critical, this rollback. The regulatory overreach, which, by the way, in my view, campaigning all over our great state, is not a Republican issue, it's not a Democratic issue, it is an Alaskan and American issue. Everybody has a story on this element of what's going on with the federal government. Everybody. The second area, which is something that's such a great opportunity for our country, but also a tremendous opportunity for us as Alaskans, is to take advantage of this American energy renaissance and unleash our economic and energy potential. Huge. And Alaska needs to be leading this energy renaissance that the federal government has been undermining. Imagine a federal government that is a partner in opportunity, a partner in progress, a partner in prosperity, not the obstacle that they've been. The sky would be the limit for Alaska and America. And when we seize that energy renaissance, which is right there for the taking, and it's ANWR, it's federal land, it's making our federal regulatory system help us, not undermine us on these kind of projects, we will finally address the critical issue in the interior that we have to address, which is that high cost of energy that we have to bring down. And I'll just finally mention the third area that we've been focusing on, which is an important area. I'm certainly about less government, more freedom, but we also need to take care of our most vulnerable in society. And let me talk about one group that I'm very focused on in terms of doing that. Our veterans. Yeah. I want to show a hand of all the veterans that are in the room. A round of applause for our veterans. You know, before I launched my campaign, I started looking very much into what was happening with my Marines that I'm still serving with, in terms of the young men and women coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, the wait times for them at the VA under Mark Bagich's tenure, on the Veterans Affairs Committee. The wait times in 2009, the number in terms of a backlog went from 130,000, 4 years later, almost over 620,000. The USA Today called it a national disgrace, which it is. Mark Begich was on the Veterans Affairs Committee, asleep at the switch, when this happened to our young men and women, veterans coming back from these wars. We have a sacred trust and responsibility to our veterans that we need to make a commitment on, not ignore. So when I launched my campaign 1 year ago, here in Fairbanks, with my mother and father-in-law with me, my amazing wife Julie, our 3 teenage daughters, was dressed up nice, coat and tie, and I had these boots on. And one of the reporters looked at me and said, "Hey, you got that nice suit and everything, coat and tie, what are you wearing those boots for?" They look a little out of place. I said, "These are my Marine Corps combat boots. And I'm going to make this campaign about making sure we take care of our veterans." So this is the agenda, and I think that starting on Tuesday, November 4th, we start to take the country back, we start to seize the opportunities that we have, and I'll tell you this, if everybody does what Senator Cruz said, reach out to your family, reach out to your friends, reach out to people you go to church with. If we win Fairbanks, we're going to win the state, we're going to win the U.S. Senate, we're going to retire Harry Reid, and we're going to take our country back.
You got to